You ever smell something so strong, so old, so deep in your bones, that it pulls you straight back into a life you thought you'd left behind? Well, for me, that smell is coal oil in the morning. And child, once you hear what happened in this little holler, you'll know why. My name's Ruth Ann Carter. I'm 78 years old, born and raised right here in Harlan County, Kentucky. And I'm sittin' on my old porch swing right now as I tell you this, watchin' the mist rise up off the mountains the same way it has since I was a little girl. The boards creak under me when I rock, slow, steady, like a heartbeat tryin' its best to keep goin'. My flower pots line the porch rail, pink geraniums, red begonias, a stubborn little fern that refuses to die even in the coldest winters. I reach out and brush the leaves with my fingers, and for a moment, everything feels soft again. Right beside the door, hangin' from a rusty nail, is Ray Jr.'s old mining hat. It's dented, scuffed, and covered in the black dust that no amount of scrubbin' could ever take out. Some days I swear that hat still smells like the man who wore it, sweat, coal, and whiskey. Other days it just feels like a shadow I can't bury. Before I keep on, child, drop your county in the comments. I always like knowin' where folks are listenin' from. Now let me pull you back to the year 1968. Back when I was just 28 years old, with 4 little ones hangin' onto my skirt. Back when the mountains felt bigger than my prayers. And the nights were so long, I thought the sun might never rise again. The early days, before the darkness. When I married Ray Jr., I believed in him with my whole heart. He was 19, built strong from swingin' a pick since he was a boy, with a grin mischievous enough to melt a preacher's patience. He brought me wildflowers the day he asked me to marry him. Said he picked every single one thinkin' of my smile. Back then, he wasn't mean. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't the monster he later became. But the mines. Child, the mines take pieces of a man the way the river eats away the mountain. Slow at first, then all at once. Long hours. Low pay. Black dust in the lungs. Fear in the heart. He started climbin' into that bottle like it was the only place he could breathe. At first it was just weekends. Then it was Tuesdays. Then it was every night. I kept tellin' myself. He's just tired. He's just stressed. The mines are gettin' to him. But denial is a soft blanket that turns into a chokehold if you keep it wrapped around you too long. The first signs. My oldest girl, Dolores, was 9 that winter. Bright-eyed. Sweet. Always hummin' some hymn under her breath. One night I was shellin' beans at the table when the front door slammed. Ray stumbled in, drunk as sunrise, mutterin' curses about his foreman. He kicked his boots off hard enough to rattle the stove. Dolores was sweepin' near the fireplace. The minute her daddy staggered past, the broom slipped right out of her hands. She flinched. Not the kind of flinch a child makes when someone talks loud. No, this was the kind that comes from being hit before. I froze. The beans rolled across the floor. But Ray didn't see none of it. He just collapsed in the chair and passed out with his boots half off. I walked over to Dolores and knelt beside her. What was that, baby? I asked. Nothin', Mama. Her eyes were too big, too shiny. And she kept glancin' at her daddy like he was a snake coiled in the corner. That was the first time I felt that cold hand on my spine, the one that tells you something's wrong but you're too scared to name it. The bruises. A week later, I was hangin' clothes on the line when Dolores ran out to me, shiverin' in a thin little nightgown. Mama, my back hurts. I thought maybe she'd fallen off the bed or bumped into something. Let me see, honey. She hesitated. And that hesitation. Lord help me. It told me everything before she even turned around. When she finally lifted the nightgown, my whole world went silent. On her back, her thighs, her little hips, were bruises shaped just like a belt buckle. Round, metal-edged, deliberate. I swear my heart stopped. Just stopped. I touched one of the bruises with the tip of my finger and she sucked in her breath like she'd been burned. Who did this? I whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The truth was standin' in our kitchen, snorin' like a hog, belt still looped through his dirty jeans. The night I pretended to sleep. I didn't scream. Didn't grab a knife. Didn't call the law. Child, you have to understand. In 1968, in a company-owned mining town, the law didn't belong to women like me. It belonged to the miners' bosses, to the men who swung the belts, not the ones who bled under them. If I told them Ray was hittin' my girl, they wouldn't arrest him. They'd arrest me for disturbing the peace. So I did the only thing I could. I waited. For 3 nights straight, I pretended to be asleep. I listened to every creak, every breath, every shadow that moved across the walls. On the 4th night, I caught him. I heard the floorboard outside Dolores's room squeak. I heard her tiny whimper. I heard his slurred voice whisper something that still makes me sick to this day. I didn't let myself think. If I thought, I would have died right there. Instead, I slid quietly from the bed and walked to the kitchen. My hands knew exactly what they were looking for. Baling twine. The kind we used to tie feed sacks on the back porch. And beside the stove, a tin can of coal oil. I didn't feel fear. I felt something colder. Something sharper. Like a blade forged out of every bruise on my little girl's back. The plan: I waited by the bedroom door until he staggered out. He didn't see me. Was too drunk to see anything. "Ray," I said softly. "You c'min to bed now. You're scaring the young uns." He grunted, shoved past me, and collapsed onto our mattress. Didn't even get his boots off. And then, I tied him down. Quiet. Steady. Looping the twine around his wrists, his ankles, the bedposts. The whole time, he snored. When he finally stirred, the coal oil was already poured in a slow circle around the bed. The match was in my hand. He blinked up at me confused. Then afraid. "Ruthann, what are you doing?" I held the match close enough he could feel the heat. "You're gonna sign over the house," I said. "And then you're gonna leave this holler forever." He cussed, spit, threatened. But when that match touched the coal-oiled floorboard and a tiny flame flickered to life, he signed. Shaken. Sweaty. Sober for the first time in years. He left. I cut the twine once he finished. He scrambled out of that house like the devil himself was chasing him. Maybe he was. He disappeared into West Virginia after that. I heard later he died in a mine collapse. Some folks said it was an accident. Some said the mountain took him back on purpose. Me? I just closed my eyes and whispered. The mountain took its own back. And then, I went on raising my children alone. But what came after? Child, what came after changed more than my own little world. It changed this whole holler. It changed the women who lived inside it. And it changed what these mountains allow, and what they do not. That's what I'm fixin' to tell you now, the women who came in the dark. That winter of 1968 was the coldest I can remember. The kind of cold that creeps under the door frames and sits with you even when you're wrapped in quilts. My 4 babies slept in one room with the door closed tight to keep the heat in. I slept by the stove, hooded in blankets, listening to the coal hiss and pop. But even in the cold, my house felt warmer than it had in years. There was no belt on the table. No anger in the walls. No bottle rolling across the floor. Just the quiet sound of children finally sleeping safe. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe. The whispers around town. Word travels fast in a holler. Folks pretend things are secrets, but child, the mountains hear everything. And they talk. People noticed Ray's sudden disappearance. They noticed the house deed in my name. They noticed that I finally stood straighter and didn't look over my shoulder anymore. Some said I ran him off. Some said I prayed him gone. Some said the mountain took him as payment for his sins. I didn't correct anyone. Let folks believe what they want. The truth is a heavy stone, and not everyone deserves to hold it. The first knock. It was mid-March when the first woman came. I was scrubbing the kitchen floor, trying to get the winter soot off the boards. The kids were outside drawing hopscotch squares with rocks. Then I heard it. A soft knock. Not the kind of knock men use. Not a fist, not a thud. It was gentle, nervous. Like someone tapping hope against wood. I opened the door and saw Mary Belle Whitaker. She lived 3 houses down. Pretty woman. Too pretty for the man she married. I'd seen her at church, always with long sleeves no matter the weather. That day, her lip was cracked. Her cheek was swollen yellow-blue. She had a baby on her hip, and the baby's face was streaked with tears. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. I stepped aside and said, "Come in, honey." She walked through that doorway like she was stepping out of a storm. I made her tea. I cleaned her cut lip. I rocked her baby until it stopped crying. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled like a candle in wind. "Ruthann, they say you ain't afraid of Ray Jr. no more. They say you made him leave for good. Is it true?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her bruises. At the baby's sad little face. At the way her shoulders folded in like she was trying to disappear into her own ribs. And I knew that telling her the truth wasn't just an answer. It was a lifeline. Yes, I said, soft but steady. It's true. She started crying then. Not loud. Not hysterical. Just soft little sobs like her heart was too tired to break all at once. She stayed the night on my sofa. The next morning, when the sun cut through the mountains, she packed her bag and walked back home with her chin higher than the day before. The second knock. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Then again. And again. Women started coming to my door after dark. Sometimes with babies. Sometimes with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Sometimes with bruises. Sometimes with stories that bruised worse. One woman, Sarah Jo, came with her arm in a sling. Another came barefoot in the snow. One came pregnant and crying, begging for a place to hide for the night. Every time, I opened the door. Every time, I gave them blankets, food, the softest corner of the house. And every time I asked myself, Lord, why are they coming to me? But deep down, I knew. Women know when another woman has walked through fire. And didn't let it burn her down. The night we hid 3 women at once. I'll never forget this night. It was late, nearly midnight. My kids were asleep, and I was knitting by the stove. Then came a frantic pounding on the door. Not the soft kind this time. This was desperate. Urgent. I opened it to find 3 women, all from different parts of the county, shivering and breathless. One had dried blood on her forehead. One had a busted lip. One was barefoot and clutching a little boy. Behind them, far down the road, I saw lantern lights. Men shouting. Looking. Those women were running for their lives. I didn't think. I just acted. Inside, I whispered. Hurry. I pulled them into the kitchen, locked the door, and put out every lamp so the house looked empty. Then I led them to the cellar door, told them to hide down there behind the sacks of potatoes and jars of beans. I could hear the men coming closer, Logan, yelling curses, threatening to take back what's theirs. Something inside me snapped awake then. Not fear. Not anger. Purpose. The same purpose that made me tie Ray Jr. to that bed. When the men reached my yard, they started banging on the door. Ruth Ann, we know they're in there. I lifted my chin and cracked the door open just enough to show my face. Ain't nobody here but me and my kids, I said. You're lying. One of them tried to shoulder his way in. Then he saw it. The coal oil can. Sitting right beside my foot. Matchbox on top. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, you can come in if you want. But you ain't gonna walk back out. The men froze. They knew what I did to Ray. And they knew I'd do it again if any of them crossed my door frame. Not a single one stepped inside. They backed away slow, muttering curses, but they left. And when the lantern light finally disappeared into the trees, I opened the cellar and told the women it was safe. They held me and cried. And I held them right back. The idea that started it all. Not long after that night, I realized something. My little company house, with its patched windows, and creaky floors, and 2 bedrooms, had become more than a home. It had become a refuge. Women started sending each other by word of mouth. Go to Ruth Ann Carter's house. She understands. She don't turn nobody away. Soon it wasn't just women from my holler. They came from Black Mountain, from Loyal, from Cumberland, from towns I'd never set foot in. And every one of them carried the same look. Fear on the outside. Fight on the inside. I fed them. Bandaged them. Let them rest. Let them cry. Let them breathe. And slowly, a thought started growing in my mind. A small thought at first. A dangerous thought. A powerful thought. What if this house ain't enough? What if we need something bigger? Something for all of us. That was the seed that would become the first women's shelter in Harlan County. But seeds don't sprout easy in hard mountain soil. And back then, the world didn't believe women deserved a place to run. The day a stranger changed everything. It was early spring when a stranger came, a woman named Evelyn Ruth McCarty. Tall, neat dress, thick glasses, not a single bruise on her face. She didn't look like the others. She looked official. I was suspicious. Can I help you? I asked. She nodded. I'm from the Kentucky Council for Community Welfare. I've been hearing stories about women coming to you. About you protecting them when no one else will. I stood tall. Those stories true? She asked. I didn't lie. Yes, ma'am. They are. She didn't scold me. Didn't warn me. Didn't threaten to involve the law. Instead, she smiled. Good. Because I think I can help you. She told me there was grant money tiny at first available for community safety initiatives. If we could justify it. If we could prove the need. If we could show the county women needed a safe place. We could apply. You're already doing the work, she said. All you need is a building and a name. I felt my breath catch. A building. A shelter. A place for women who had nowhere else. I didn't know how to run a shelter. I didn't know how to write a grant. I didn't know anything about paperwork or budgets or committees. But I knew one thing better than anyone. How to save a woman's life. Build in the dream. The next months were a blur of chaos and courage. Me and Evelyn wrote letters to the county board. We held meetings in my kitchen. We collected donations, blankets, canned goods, a couple of cots, a broken crib someone patched together for free. Men called us troublemakers. Said we were breaking families. Said we were stirring rebellion. Let 'em talk. Every insult was proof we were doing something right. The hardest part was finding a building. Then one day, Mr. Harlan himself, the oldest miner in the holler, walked up to my porch with keys in his hand. He said, Ruth Ann, my wife needed a place like this 40 years ago. Take the old storage house by the creek. Fix it up. Make it into something good. I cried right there in front of him, the first night of the shelter. We opened the shelter on a warm summer night. Fresh paint on the walls. 4 beds. 1 crib. A shelf of canned beans and cornbread mix. A handmade sign on the door. The Haven House. A safe home for women and children. The very first night, we had 2 women sleep there. The second night, 4. The first week, 12. Some stayed 1 night. Some stayed months. Every story carved a mark on my heart. Every woman lit a new flame inside the dark. And I realized, the fire that nearly burned my life down was now the same fire lighting the way for others. The Haven House had been running nearly a year when the trouble started. By then we had helped more than 50 women. Some stayed a night. Some stayed months. Some never went back to the men who hurt them. And some, God rest their souls, went back anyway. I learned real fast you can open a door, but you can't walk through it for someone else. Still, the shelter was doing good. The kids were growing. I'd saved enough money to fix the roof and buy a used washer. But peace in a coal town never lasts. Not when the men start talking. Not when the mountain keeps secrets. Not when the past refuses to stay buried. The whispers turned to threats. It started small. A few men loitering by the creek outside the shelter. Spittin' tobacco, mudderin'. This place is trouble. Women need to stay in their homes. She's tinning wives against their husbands. One day, someone threw a rock through the shelter window. Another day, they slashed the tires on my truck. Evelyn, God bless her, told me to ignore it. Growing things get stepped on, she said. But they grow anyway. I tried to believe her. But then the threats got personal. A note nailed to my door. Shut it down or we'll shut it down for you. Another left in my mailbox. You ain't a hero. You ain't a saint. You ain't gonna win. I didn't show the kids. Didn't tell the women. Didn't tell nobody. Fear is a disease in a small town. It spreads. It festers. It eats the truth out of your mouth. But the worst came from a place I didn't expect. The law arrives. Sheriff Dalton came by one evening, thumb hooked in his belt. Big man. Bigger ego. He said, Ruth Ann, we've been getting complaints. Husbands say you're harboring their wives. They want their property back. Property. I repeated. That's what the law says. I felt sick. He wasn't there to help me. He was there to warn me. Word is, he added, you forced Ray Jr. off with threats. I stared him down. You believe that? He shrugged. I believe the man ain't been seen in a year. And folks talk. Maybe you should shut this little operation before someone gets hurt. I stepped forward. You listen to me, Dalton. Every woman in this house is here by choice. Ain't none of their husbands laid claim to their bodies or souls. And I ain't shut in nothing. He leaned in close enough I could smell the whiskey on his breath. Sometimes, he whispered, good people get burned standing too close to the fire. I stared at him without blinking. Child, I am the fire. He didn't like that. Not one bit. He left with a warning. You keep pushin', Ruth Ann, and you'll make the wrong man angry. I'd already made 1,000 wrong men angry. The woman who changed everything. Her name was Anna Lee Walker. 17. Barely grown. Pregnant. Bruised from her throat to her ribs. Came to the shelter one night limpin' so bad I thought her leg was broken. I took her inside, gave her soup, cleaned her cuts. When I asked what happened, she whispered. My husband said if I left again, he'd kill me. She had nowhere else to go. No family. No money. No safe place except my worn-down shelter with its patched windows and creaky floors. I put her in the spare bed. Tucked a blanket around her belly. Told her she could stay as long as she needed. But 2 days later, everything exploded. Her husband Tommy Walker, mean as they come, stormed into town with a gun. Drunk. Screamin' that he'd take back what's his. Men followed him like dogs on a chain, encouragin' the madness. He was lookin' for one place. My shelter. Evelyn begged me to board the doors. To hide. To call someone. But who? The same sheriff who told me women were property? No. I'd fought one man to protect my child. I'd fight 100 to protect someone else's. The standoff. It was dusk when Tommy reached the shelter. Pink sky behind him. Gun in his hand. Rage twist in his face. He fired a shot in the air. Women screamed inside. Children hid under beds. I stepped onto the porch. He aimed the gun straight at me. Where is she? I stayed still. Calm. Steady. She's safe, I said. And you ain't talking her. He cocked the gun. You think you're better than me, he snarled. You think you're some kinda hero. No, I said. I think I'm the only thing standin' between you and the devil comin' for your soul. He roared and came up the steps. But he didn't get far. Because I did the one thing he didn't expect. I stepped forward, not back. Close enough he could see the matchbook in my hand. Close enough he could see what I had poured earlier around the porch boards. Coal oil. Invisible in the dusk light. Strong enough to burn out sin. His eyes widened. You wouldn't, he whispered. I flicked a match. Let it dance in front of my face. I would burn this whole porch down before I let you touch that girl again. For a moment, just a moment. He believed me. Because he knew my story. Everyone did. What I did to Ray wasn't a rumor. Men like him knew when a woman had reached the point where fear dies. That's the moment she becomes unstoppable. But before he could decide whether to run or shoot, someone else made the choice for him. The sheriff's betrayal. Sheriff Dalton stepped out from behind the crowd. Tommy, he said, put the gun down. Relief washed over the women watchin' from inside. But I knew better. Dalton wasn't there to save us. He was there to calm Tommy down so he could drag Anna home. Give me the girl, Dalton said to me. She's a minor. Belongs with her husband. She belongs somewhere she ain't afraid, I said. He narrowed his eyes. You don't decide that. But she does, I said. Every woman does. Dalton stepped up on the porch. Hand on his gun. Close enough to knock the matches right out of my hand. Ruth Ann, he said, I'm ordering you to release her. Then, something happened. Something small. Something quiet. But it changed everything. The women inside stepped forward. Mary Bell, Sarah Jo, Lillian, Jenny May, Anna Lee tremblin', but standin'. One by one, they walked past me and onto the porch, standin' between me and the sheriff. Dalton stared at them like he was seeing ghosts. And Sarah Jo, who once hid in my cellar with a busted arm, looked him right in the eyes and said, You'll have to go through all of us. The sheriff's face twisted. He wasn't expecting a rebellion. Not from women. Not from the silent ones. Not from the survivors. But he didn't get a chance to decide. Because that's when the mountain spoke. The news that broke the hollow. A miner came running from up the road. Face white as snow. Breathless. There's been a collapse. North Ridge mine just caved in. Men gasped. Women cried out. Dalton froze. Tommy's gun lowered. Everything stopped. Who was inside? Dalton stammered. The miner swallowed hard. Ray Jr. Carter. And 2 others. My heart didn't skip. It didn't race. It went quiet. Quiet like the moment before a storm breaks. Quiet like the breath before a scream. Quiet like acceptance. Ray Jr. My past. My fear. My nightmare. Gone. Taken by the same mountain he spent his life digging into. Tommy staggered. Even he knew what the collapse meant. No rescue. No survival. Northridge swallowed men whole. The crowd murmured. The mountain took him. The mountain takes its own back. Maybe it's justice. Dalton's authority evaporated. Tommy lowered his gun, shaken. Nobody wanted to fight anymore. Not after death came Callan so close. The sheriff cleared his throat. Go home, Tommy. Tommy didn't argue. Didn't yell. Didn't even look at Anna. He just walked away. A broken man. Dalton gave me one last cold stare. Then left. The aftermath. When the crowd was gone, the women gathered around me. No words. Just quiet breathin'. Quiet realizin'. Quiet strength. Anna Lee wept into my shoulder. Sarah Jo held my hand. Mary Bell whispered. You did it, Ruth Ann. You protected us all. But I shook my head. No, I said softly. We did it. Every woman here did it. That night, we filled the shelter with lantern light. Women held their babies closer. Children slept without fear. And I sat on the porch long after midnight, listening to the wind move through the pines. That's when I smelled it. Coal oil. Not strong, not real, just a memory carried on the night breeze. And in that moment, I understood something. Some fires ain't meant to destroy. Some fires are meant to cleanse. Some fires burn away what's hurt you, so you can grow again. Years later the Haven House grew, got funding, got support, got walls that didn't leak and heat that didn't sputter out at midnight. Women came from all over Harlan County. From 3 counties over. From towns I never visited. Some stayed a night. Some stayed a lifetime. My children grew up knowing what courage looks like. What a safe home means. What a woman can build when she refuses to bow her head. And me, I got older. Softer in some places. Harder in others. Now I sit on this old porch swing, watching the mist rise off the mountains. Telling my stories to whoever will listen. And I end every story the same. Child, if you ever smell coal oil on the wind, that's just the Lord reminding you, some fires have to burn, so new flowers can grow. Thank you for watching. If this story gripped you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it forward. Stories like this remind us, the truth always finds a way out no matter how deep it's buried. See you in the next video.